First, I want to introduce my wife. No one ever sees her, but she's the reason I can go all these places. We've been married 44 years. It's Quan. Something that is pointed out ahead of time. I just went to the county commissioners meeting because we had an urban development plan in the county that calls from area slums. They just look like urban or a rural area, but it is real, and something that the more I've been involved and I've been in the legislature the last 3 years, 3 sessions, is that it's up to people coming and being informed. To be the key to change things or stopping what's changing. If you talk to someone who has authority, an elected official, whoever, when you say things that show that you do not know what you're talking about, they cut you off minimum right then. So we need to be informed. We need to read a lot. We need to follow. Something like this is a great thing to really get the details on, because it's a real example when you go to talk about what's the encroachment, what's happening with money. It rings home to all of us because it's right next door. At any rate, this is something that came up, and this is an effort to inform y'all about something that I didn't know about. But down at the legislature, we've been working on a partisan election bill. The reason we've been working on it is because some of the elections are changed. Well, all of them that are changed, there's 3 categories. It's consolidated government, the local judges, not the state judges, but our magistrate and probate judges, and the school boards. They can be changed to nonpartisan elections, and that's done through local act. And nobody knows it's being done usually until long after it's done. Well, this year, the Republicans being in charge were able to ram through a lot of things through local act that are doing exactly the kind of things that we as grassroots should be appalled at. So I wanted to introduce you to the local act process. What is an act? An act is a bill that has passed both houses in identical form and has been signed by the governor or became law without the governor's signature. That's if he just said something, it eventually becomes law. And that can also be termed a law or statute. In Georgia, there are 2 categories of act: general act and local act. Now, as far as most of us don't even hear about local acts, but this is the number of introduced bills in the 2012 section. The House introduced 1,116, and the Senate introduced 440. Of those that passed, that's what they introduced, but of those that passed, there were 270 local bills, House bills that passed, and 39 Senate bills. So you can see a significant amount of legislation that goes through down at the Capitol is local acts. Constitution of the state of Georgia. This is home rule. We all have heard the term home rule. It's in the Constitution, Article 9, Section 2. I'm going to breeze through this fairly fast because I want you to understand it's there, and I'll be glad to answer questions. But it's fairly, it was new to me. I had to sit and dig to understand the process, so that's why I'm going to do this. Local legislation. First off, I'm going to say is we have to have the local act process. I'm not talking about trying to stop the process. It is essential to the way we do our governance here. Because by the Constitution, things like homestead exemptions, hotel, motel taxes, form of government changes, redevelopment power, all these things have to go through the legislature. And it would just bog the whole process down if they were doing all these hundreds of little things for a county or municipality and having to go to the floor through the regular process. So this is an essential process. I'm not talking about not having the process. Local acts, though, are usually introduced at the behest of local elected officials. The county commissioner or the city council says we need to change this part, or we need to give this authority, we need to raise a hotel motel tax, etc. I don't know if I can go back with this or not.
No, you can't. Need some help.
It doesn't matter. What happened the day we went down to, I say things happen for a reason a lot of times. The day we were going down to Adairsville to give this first presentation, I just had to put it together. Well, in the Calhoun Times that morning, there was an article. Home rule challenges. Georgia has a strong history of respecting the autonomy of local governments. This says session significant precedents were made which challenge home rule. Many will likely result in legal challenges. Even some reporter, I didn't see it in any other paper, but some reporter recognized what was going on down there. These are just what caught my attention when I was down at the Capitol. And that's why I started looking into the process. Local act for Fulton and Bibb counties, they were two obvious ones that were in the papers quite a bit, and we were down there while they were being debated. These local acts were passed in spite of opposition of the local officials, opposition of many legislators, the vote of the citizens. Fulton County, these are the type of bills they put up. You can see, these are things that they would have to approve if the local officials wanted to do it. But the local official didn't want to do it. The Republicans were using their supermajority to start introducing local acts to control how the county's being run. These local acts were, the reason was, and this was known to everybody that's down there, increase the cost and reduce revenue to the Fulton County government is a means to discredit the local Democrat officials and to increase Republican power against the wishes of the voters. Now, I might generally be against what the Democrats want, but it's just like our amendments, Bill of Rights. If we want to violate somebody else's freedom of speech, Second Amendment, search and seizure, then we're going to be violated eventually ourselves. Now this is the bill that was passed to consolidate the Macon and Bibb County governments. Now, why was that important? Because they voted on it down there. 57% of the people voted to consolidate the government. Fine, that went to a referendum. The bill had the whole charter in it, explained what they were doing, who was going to be in charge. The consolidation bill specified which elections were partisan, which positions were appointed. This one's a little sensitive here. In 2013, this year, the Republicans introduced legislation to change that. The Democrats followed them tooth and nail. It was a big issue on the floor, which is the first thing I saw. They tied up a lot of time to make it. So what the Republicans did, they started introducing all these bills that have been signed by the governor, changing the elections, changing the charter that the voters had voted on. So these local acts were introduced by Republicans to nullify the vote. Like we heard notification. Well, they were doing it to the citizens down there to have these offices partisan or appointed. They had decided that. The local Republican Party people got with the legislators. Now, this wasn't the officials that were elected. This is just the party people. And said, hey, we need an advantage here. It doesn't matter what the voters say. We know what we want. So that's what they did. I handed out this little sheet. This is Carl Vinson Institute did this. It shows how a regular bill is passed, the process of it. I read it before I went down there the first time trying to understand it. I understood the process, but seeing it implemented is a different story. So, but that is the process. Now, local acts, though, here's how they're done. Usually, the local officials say we need y'all to do something that has to be done by state law. So, the representative takes it to the legislative council and draws up a bill. They have to do a legal notice. The legal notice has to be in the week before the bill is introduced. It has to be put in the legal order where notices are for that county. Then the bill is dropped at the clerk's office. You have what's called a first reading, assigned committee, and a second reading. That's in the House. Goes to committee chairman. It doesn't go to the committee, unlike regular legislation. If they've got the notice of the publication and a signed copy of the reps, the people that represent that area. It may just be one legislator. Here it's at least two, maybe three. Whitfield's got three reps. Signed by them and shows a copy where they put it in the paper. Goes right back to the clerk. Goes to the assembly, and they pass it. Crosses over to the other assembly, into their clerk's office. It does the same thing. Goes back to the clerk, sent to the governor. After passage by both houses. Now this came off one of the university websites explaining how what could be done with local action. Can be done in 5 legislative days. The legislature meets for 40 days in a session. They are not all together. This year they compacted quite a bit. The days off, they can't do any of the process there. So according to them, it can be done in just 5 legislative days, and I'm going to show y'all something here in a minute. And as an example of the local act and nobody knowing about it, a couple of years ago in Whitfield County, we were talking about consolidation. Decided to work it. Well, when I went back and looked at the money, the government spent $106,000, the school spent $236,000. This is Friday, March the 18th. That year, right there was a notice in the paper on a Friday. Now, what it was being done, notice of intention to do this. This is it. This is how it's working. To continue the Dalton Independent School System and other purposes. Now, if I had read that, then it was kind of innocuous. We didn't realize the money implications. But this is where this is the rules of the city. This is how they do it. And the rules of house is up there too. This button sensitive, so this is the sheet that has to accompany local legislation. This is the rules of the delegation of the county. That's attached, and the notice is attached, and it goes to the committee chairman. This is all of that was on that day. Right there it is. The committee chairman, no one in the committee knows except him. If it's got what the paperwork that their rules require, it goes right back. So the school system spent 69% of the money, but we're immune to scrutiny by the Consolidation Commission. What that bill did is it took $236 million of expenditures off the table as far as being discussed. Now, it may have been the right thing to do, but nobody knew about it, and it slipped through in a hurry at the behest, and I asked, of nobody but the Dalton Public School officials. They picked up the phone and called and said, we need this done before the consolidation goes forward, and we'll fight it tooth and nail. So they did. That was all they knew about it. Nobody else knew. Local bill was passed in 6 legislative days, 13 days from published notice. You can read that. There was no public debate. Nobody even knew about it. I didn't know about it. Had I not actually seen the bill down at the legislature, but I didn't understand the implications of it myself. And that's a problem with a lot of things that we're handed. We read it, it sounds okay, and they know the arguments, but that's why we have to really start being informed, and people who've experienced the implications, the way they word these things are very important. They tell us what to look for. So, that type of news. I was going to do this presentation, and yesterday morning, lo and behold, I saw this. Now, I handed out these so y'all could read it because it's an article from the Atlanta Journal. I'll let y'all read the title of it. This is Jimmy Pruitt. He's the only representative for Dodge County. In 2012, when you guys took over the Dodge County Eastman, that's the city in Dodge County, developmental force, which we got, started digging into a landing. What happened was and it's in the paperwork there, is that Pruitt sold a piece of property he had bought for $600,000. to the Development Authority for $2.1 million, but it was a deferred payment. So the Development Authority took it, oh, they were going to get some industry in there, so they got government money, $500,000 to build a building from the state, and they did improvements. Well, the guy, or the company didn't produce, so they would have to go into foreclosure. Now, had it gone into foreclosure, Pruitt would have had to bought it back to get his money. You know, it's one of those things. Instead of going to foreclosure, they just gave it back to him with the improvements. So he got it back. So this guy was blowing the whistle. So what does Pruitt do? He goes down and he introduces 2 local acts. The significance, it changes the authority, and guess what? This guy that's complaining was the only one who had to resign as soon as the governor signs the bill. On top of that, the property, which he had had for 10 years, was never put back on the county tax roll because of this guy here was put back on this past year, I think, or something. So the whistleblower was getting jammed. Now, the other bill, 636, abolished the airport authority. Well, and they was combining them into the other one. This is what these 2 bills do. That's okay, but the significance of that is the airport authority had a lawsuit against 3 of the local banks for some shady dealings. Pruitt is on the board of directors of one of the banks. As soon as these are combined, the lawsuit goes away. Now, this is a powerful piece of legislation if I'm Pruitt. And you think anybody